I thought moving into an old apartment would be a fresh start. I was wrong. I woke up at exactly 3:17 a.m. to the sound of someone whispering my name from the corner of my bedroom. Not shouting, not calling, just whispering. Alex. The voice was so faint I almost believed it came from a dream, except for the fact that I was already sitting upright, wide awake, drenched in sweat. I hadn't stirred from sleep. I hadn't moved. It felt like my body knew something was wrong before my brain could catch up. My room was pitch black, but I refused to move for a solid minute. I just sat there, barely breathing, staring into the darkness near the window where the voice had come from. Nothing. The whisper didn't come again, but the air in the room felt wrong, thick, stale, colder than it should be in June. My apartment didn't have air conditioning. Hell, I'd been sweating through my sheets most nights. But right now, I could see my breath. I finally reached for my phone. 3:17. My hand trembled as I switched on the flashlight and aimed it toward the corner. Empty. No shadows, no figures. Just my old nightstand and an unopened box of books I hadn't touched since moving in. But I knew what I'd heard, and I knew, deep down, that I hadn't been alone in that room. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. I couldn't. Every time I shut my eyes, I imagined someone standing just beyond the bed edge. I stayed under the thin sheet, listening, my ears straining for any hint of movement. But the apartment stayed quiet, too quiet, the kind of silence that feels manufactured, like the building was holding its breath. When the sun finally rose and washed my room in a dull gray light, the tension broke just enough for me to get up. My muscles ached from staying in the same position for hours. I made coffee with shaky hands and tried to write it off as stress, as nerves. The move, the divorce, the new job, it was a lot. But that whisper, it wasn't in my head. I checked every corner of the apartment, closet, bathroom, even under the bed like a damn child. Nothing. No signs of a break-in, no open windows. The building had a main entrance with a digital lock. The windows didn't open wide enough for someone to climb through. Everything was normal. Except for the cold. Even with the sun up, my bedroom was still noticeably colder than the rest of the unit. I held my hand up to the vent. Nothing. No air coming in. I didn't even have central air. Still, the chill was there, and it clung to that same corner where I'd heard the voice. I chalked it up to old insulation or a draft or anything rational I could come up with to avoid spiraling into paranoia. The rest of the day passed in a haze. I barely got any work done. My mind kept drifting back to the night, replaying that whisper in my head. Alex. It didn't sound angry. It sounded desperate. That night, I left every light on in the apartment. I even let the TV play something dumb and harmless, some late-night cooking show with soft jazz in the background. Anything to drown out the silence. I double-checked every lock before going to bed, propped a chair under the doorknob. It was ridiculous, but it made me feel just a little safer. Still, I didn't sleep. Not really. I drifted in and out of shallow, jittery naps until around 4 a.m., when something new happened. The TV turned off. By itself. I sat up straight in bed and stared down the hallway. I could still see the soft glow from the screen flickering just a minute ago. Now, total blackness. Silence. I got up slowly. My heart thudded in my chest like a hammer, each beat shaking through my ribs. I walked to the living room, phone light in hand, and stood in front of the TV. It was off, not unplugged, not shorted, just off. The remote was right where I left it, untouched. That's when I noticed something even worse. The air was cold again, but only around me, like I had stepped into a refrigerator. I could see my breath hanging in the air, thick and unnatural. And then, on the screen of the black TV, I saw it. Not my reflection. Someone standing behind me. I whipped around, but nothing was there. Just the empty room, the soft hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen, and the faint buzzing of the street lamps outside. My heart hammered so hard I thought it would burst through my chest. I looked back at the TV screen. The figure was gone. I tried to convince myself it was a trick of the light, a glitch on the screen. But deep down, I knew it wasn't. I spent the rest of the night sitting on the couch clutching a baseball bat I found in the closet. The hours dragged on with no more appearances, no whispers, no cold spots. But the damage was done. I was terrified. The next day, I started digging into the apartment's history. It was built in the early 1900s, originally as a boarding house for workers. Over the decades, the ownership changed hands multiple times, and the place saw its share of tragedies, deaths, disappearances, and rumors of strange rituals whispered in the local bars. One name kept popping up: Thomas Grayson, a man who had lived in this very unit in the 1920s. He was a recluse, an artist who rarely left his room. After a scandal involving the disappearance of a young woman, Thomas vanished without a trace. The landlord at the time tore down his studio, but the apartment remained sealed off for years. Some tenants claimed the room was cursed, haunted by the shadows of the past. That night, armed with my newfound knowledge, I approached my bedroom with a mix of dread and curiosity. The air felt heavier, almost charged, as if the room itself was aware of what I now knew. I set up my phone to record, determined to capture any evidence of what I'd been experiencing. With trembling hands, I whispered into the darkness, "If you're here, show yourself." Minutes passed in silence, just the hum of the city outside and the occasional creak of the old building settling. Then, a soft tapping started from the corner of the room, faint but deliberate. Tap, tap, tap. I shone my flashlight toward the sound. There, against the peeling wallpaper, a shadow flickered. It wasn't a person exactly, more like a silhouette, wavering and translucent, barely holding shape. My breath caught in my throat. I wanted to run, but my feet were frozen. The shadow shifted, and for a fleeting second, I thought I saw the outline of a face. Sharp cheekbones, hollow eyes, a sadness that pierced through the gloom. Then it whispered, clear this time, "Remember me." My heart felt like it had stopped beating for a moment. "Remember me?" The voice was fragile, almost pleading, like someone desperate to be heard after decades of silence. I swallowed hard, trying to steady myself. "Who are you?" I whispered back, my voice barely audible. The shadow didn't respond, but the room seemed to pulse with energy. The cold deepened, biting through my clothes, making my skin crawl. Suddenly, the air was filled with faint sounds, the scratch of a pencil on paper, soft murmurs, and distant music from a piano. I realized what I was hearing. Memories. Echoes from the past. I looked around, trying to piece together what the shadow was trying to show me. Then, as if the room itself became a canvas, images flashed before my eyes. A young man hunched over a desk, sketching obsessively. Paintings scattered everywhere, some beautiful, others dark and disturbing. That was Thomas Grayson. I felt a wave of sadness and fear. He wasn't just a ghost, he was a tortured soul trapped by his own secrets. The memories grew more vivid. I saw Thomas sitting alone in that same room, day after day, consumed by his art and isolation. The whispers of the neighbors, the rumors that tore through his life like wildfire, the loneliness that suffocated him. Then came the night that changed everything, a confrontation with the woman who disappeared. I didn't know the details, but I saw the pain and regret etched deeply into Thomas's face. The shadow flickered, and suddenly I was standing in that room with him. "Please," the voice pleaded again, "don't forget me." I realized then that Thomas wasn't haunting the apartment to scare me. He was trying to be remembered, to have his story told so that his name wouldn't vanish into the void. I sat on the floor, overwhelmed. The chill remained, but it felt less menacing now, more like a solemn presence. I pulled out my phone and began recording my experience, determined to uncover the truth and give Thomas the voice he'd lost decades ago. But even as I tried to focus, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching me, waiting. The following days were a blur of restless nights and eerie occurrences. Objects shifted slightly when I wasn't looking, a book misplaced, a chair pushed back as if someone had just stood up. My phone's camera sometimes caught strange flickers, shadows darting just out of frame. I started researching more about Thomas, digging into old newspapers, archives, and forums. The more I learned, the heavier the burden felt. This wasn't just a haunting, it was a plea for justice. Then, one night, when reviewing the recordings on my phone, I heard it clearly. Thomas's voice, faint but unmistakable, whispering, "Thank you." At that moment, the oppressive chill lifted. The apartment felt lighter, the silence less suffocating. It was as if acknowledging him had freed some part of his trapped spirit. Yet even now, I sometimes wake up to that faint whisper, not out of fear, but a haunting reminder that some stories refuse to be forgotten.